Thank you very much, everyone, in the afternoon to a very interesting discussion on post-lockdown situation, especially with the focus of healthcare in India. Health crisis comes in a different way. Sometimes it's a great crisis, it's a bad crisis, it is a worst crisis. But usually, crisis brings something with that, and if you work on that, I think you may become a winner. And that reminds me, the famous lines by Robert Frost in his poem "Road Less Taken." That two roads diverge in the wood, and I took the road less traveled by. And possibly that is what has happened when we are, I won't call it a fag end of the COVID era, but I think last 3 days have become very promising when the recovery rate has been increasing very fast. And in fact, twice in last week, it actually the number of new active cases and number of recovered cases crisscrossed each other in opposite direction with positive for record. That's a great sign, and I'm sure we are slowly and steadily moving towards. Of course, it's going to be normal. It's going to be definitely be a new normal, and that is where I think when you talk of healthcare, and as I mentioned, I took the road less traveled by. But when it comes to healthcare, pharma in India, it's not going to be only you. When you say you, not only the stakeholders, but the regulators, the industry players, the doctor fraternity that plays significant role are going to play a huge role. And what is going to happen? You would have seen, and I've been receiving phone calls from many of my doctor friends who were practicing with me while I was a surgeon, and now also that suddenly they keep on asking. Now we have to consult remotely. What can happen? Would there be a problem? So I think telemedicine technology is going to become a huge player in the post-lockdown situation, not only in healthcare but also but entire gamut of pharma, healthcare, digital health, medical device also is going to become a huge player. And I think digital health is going to play significant role. And what is going to happen is going to be a kind of an interconnected health network between all the stakeholders, be it pharma players, be it biotech players, be it hospitals, be it doctors, be it sponsor companies doing trials in India, which is going. I'm expecting some huge increase in trials, but we need so everywhere we need some kind of an ironing of regulations conducive to the challenging op- times which have brought this opportunity, so that we can grab that opportunity. India can go somewhere, and I'm very happy that there is a thrust on manufacturing sector, and I'm so happy today that we have who else but Amit Mukim talking to us and talking to us about post lockdown. Now we are in unlock zone, so I think right time on the first day of unlock zone. I mean, you are talking about how healthcare, etc., is going to play a role. And why I say we are so lucky, because I know Amit for some time, and the insights he has, the knowledge he has, the practical approach he has no match to it, honestly speaking. And he's a management consultant turned into a business leader, and he leads the entire India operations of IQVIA, which is Quintile and IMS Health merger. It's a global company. It's a technology, information, and clinical research organization doing amazing work globally. If you see any major trials, you will see this firm's name everywhere. Now, his experience in digital health has extended to supporting innovation and entrepreneurship in India. He's an advisor to National Health Authority on Innovation. He's a vice president of TAI Mumbai, and he has been a mentor, guru to many health startups, which I am definitely aware of. And before he joined IQA, he was a healthcare leader with KPMG, and he was the youngest partner at KPMG who really moved and brought healthcare emphasis in the entire KPMG and other areas. Amazing global experience. No wonder he is with IQN leading the entire India operations. He has worked across 11 countries in India and Asia Pacific as a part of his role. And another important part, and why it is important to even listen to him in post-COVID era, He's a life coach. He's also a life coach. He believes in spirituality and fitness, and that's so important for any personality. And to top it all, he's an amateur marathon runner and coaches entrepreneurs on stress management. I think I'm so happy, Amit, you are with us to share your thoughts, your experience on post-lockdown era, especially with healthcare focus. Over to you, Amit. Stage is yours.
Thank you, Milind, and thank you, Nishit Bhai, for this conversation. I'm really looking forward to it. And a very good afternoon, everybody, on this session. It's great to be speaking to all of you. You know, this is actually, I did not prepare fully for this, so pardon me if I amble along a little bit. But when I was mentioning this to Nishit Bhai, I said, why don't we talk about 3 or 4 things? Obviously, lots and lots of conversations have been happening on this topic. So some of it may be what you're already aware of. I would also feel that, you know, while I speak a little bit, let's have a conversation as well. So maybe we'll have certain questions. So let me start with, you know, where we are today. And some people are calling it lockdown 5, some people are calling it unlock 1, whichever way we call it. I think we are exactly 5 months into this particular crisis, right? When our first case was detected, I believe it was 29th or 30th of January, and we are sitting on 1st June. Milind mentioned that the rate of doubling has been slowing down. The number of recovery cases have been higher, but you see, all of these actually in a country like India have to be really considered in the right perspective. Because I saw a very interesting graph posted by a senior business leader a few months ago, where he mapped each state of India to a certain country and said this is what India is, right? 31 countries. And we are seeing it play out, where we are seeing the incidence rate, we are seeing the response rate, we are seeing the healthcare infrastructure, we are seeing the way each state is dealing with the situation to be different, to be unique, and in some cases could be better, in some cases is great. But I think we are learning as we go along, because this is not a situation where no country, and let alone India, was ready for it. Add to it, and if you would, the forecasted growth rates that have been called out by the various countries as a result of this crisis, I am seeing a very clear correlation between what the impact on growth and output is going to be with the maturity and the integration of health systems and how well functioning they are. Which means that countries that have strongly integrated, well-run public health systems, well integrated with the private health, great norms and regulations set aside for technology, for privacy, for trials and everything else, seem to may have a better ability to bounce in a sooner and a more effective way. Because one of the things which we are not keeping in this view, apart from, because the entire focus is on the incidence rate, the testing rate, the mortality rate, and everything else, is all the other areas that already are dilemmas in the healthcare system and problems the healthcare system faces have been put aside. Part of it will turn up to be collateral damage. Part of it, in any case, will need to be put inside a stretched healthcare system. So that's one side of the story, where I want to point out that integrativeness, and the more broken any healthcare system is, I think the more stress we will face. I think in our healthcare system, let me call out some headwinds and tailwinds. I think the tailwind has been that 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago, we set out and launched the largest universal health program in the world, right? Which meant that we took a step towards bringing in private sector and public sector health on the hospital platform to provide for care for everyone under the Ayushman Bharat umbrella. Obviously, it was a major scheme, but at least the government recognized health as an agenda. It wasn't there on the agenda for many, many years amongst the core areas as India was developing. But health came on the agenda, at least with Ayushman Bharat. But I think having said that, what the current crisis has actually put in front of us are 3 or 4 things. And I read a very interesting quote, which I have quoted often in some of these sessions, is that war is often, conceptualized in the war rooms, but fought by the ground in logistics, right? And this entire crisis, I think the biggest way or the biggest piece that will put together is how effectively we have or we will be able to manage the logistics. And for healthcare, it becomes even more critical because on one side, you're dealing with samples and test kits which have a shelf life and which need to be transported in dry ice and everything else. On the other side, you have plants that are manufacturing critical medicines that need to be running in capacity and be delivering. On the third side, you have patients and chemists and stockists who are worrying that there is going to be shortage of medicine, so people are overstocking and overbuying. And we saw it during the lockdown period. And interestingly, the data that we track in March, actually there was no difference in the growth rate in March vis-a-vis last year. And we were wondering why it's happened because you see 12 to 13 days of lockdown had already hit. But the fact was that several segments of end users had actually picked up stocks for months forward, thinking that they may not have medicines, right? So the supply chain plays a huge role. And I think the far-reaching effects or some of the effects of the supply chain are yet to play out in this sector. So that is one side of it. I think the other side of it is the whole world is actually currently looking at India because India is the pharmacy of the world, right? 30-35%, 40% of our generics are being manufactured and shipped across the world. So it means that our supply chain needs to be functioning and our supply chain needs to give comfort to global manufacturers that, look, we will be able to provide for it. And India stepped up to it. I'm aware of a lot of initiatives that some of the large Indian pharma companies and government took together to make sure that some of these API supplies don't get hit, some of the HCQ gets transported in the right time to give comfort and continued confidence. Having said that, I think there's still a lot of work needs to be done on making sure that we are ourselves supply independent. We have the raw materials because you may have all the ingredients, but if you don't have the plastic for the capsule, the ingredients may lie in your factory, which is what has been happening, right? So supply chain has been tested extensively in all sectors, but it has been tested extensively in healthcare as well. So that is one side of it. I think the other side of it is there was suddenly a surge in demand of protective equipment, of ventilators and everything else, right? And I think our learning or my learning has been that we need to step up significantly in our ability to actually pivot our model to make sure that some of the approval process for getting these into the mainstream, to getting them commercialized, to getting them tested, brings in for the right response level to be able to come and deal with such a crisis. I think some of those realities have come in front of us. So that's one side of the story. I think as we move into the post-lockdown phase, my hypothesis is that, you see, one side of it is what is actually happening on the ground. But I think the other big piece around healthcare is also the psyche of the patient, the psyche of the doctor, right? Now, there will be a shift in this psyche. And we have seen this play out in the US, for example, where some of the data I was seeing in the US is that a huge number of elderly patients have actually moved to telehealth and to mail order pharmacy. They don't want to go to a doctor. They don't want to visit a clinic because they perceive that their fear the perceived fear of them dealing with this particular infection could be higher, right? That may happen here as well. At the same time, today we must understand that India, has two sets of issues, and these need to be looked at. One is that we have healthcare workers who, of course, are in the front line, right? And when we look at some of the data during the lockdown phase, we saw that only 20-25% of doctors were practicing in clinics, right? The patient volume had trickled down by almost 15-20% of the volume they were seeing. Now, that is an unsustainable solution. But at the same time, let me also say that some of these things you can cover through digital adoption, but I think what will stick is also the ability to form certain habits and an integrated system. And let me call out one example of what I mean by this, right? If you saw during the demonetization phase, what happened? It was a shock to the economy, right? The shock was money was pulled out of the supply chain, right? Here, patients are pulled out of the supply chain, medicines are pulled out of the supply chain. What happened? Digital wallets picked up, right? There was a 7, 8, 10x fold increase in digital wallets. But at the same time, please understand, I think digital wallets picked up because of two things. One is there was a huge government push and support on building the regulatory framework on enabling digital wallets. The second was each of us had a mobile phone on which we could download the app and run that wallet, right? It did not require a huge change in habit. Now, all of us are surmising right now that, this entire situation will lead to an upsurge in telehealth, it will lead to an upsurge in e-commerce, and some of these things, in my view, will play out. But I think what needs to be thought about is how much of that will be a permanent shift and how much of that will really stick on. One of the research areas we had worked on, very interesting, we had tracked the digital habits of doctors in 2012, in 2018, pre-COVID and post-COVID. Now let me share with you, in 2012, we saw that the major tool of accessing the internet, accessing technology was the laptop for a doctor, right? So 50-60% of those doctors were using the laptop. That number completely pivoted in 2018 to a mobile, right? So one was there is a huge shift in between the device in the 6-year period, and my sense is that this number has increased even more in the current situation, more in favor of the mobile and maybe a tablet, right? I think the second thing, what was happening was the usage. Now today, in the current situation, a lot of 77% of the doctors are using some kind of mechanism to reach out to patients digitally. 15-20% of them are using telehealth solutions, right? Now the point becomes to also understand how this will stick and what is the device that will really be the platform for some of these doctors who have been traditionally writing prescriptions on pen and paper. And how will that form the chain between the doctor and the patient? So that question remains unanswered. The good part is I have seen many startups, many digital health companies, we ourselves are offering certain solutions around this as IQVIA, get into the market, right, and offer this as a solution. But I think, in some of these things, as I was pointing out in another session, 3 things will play a critical role. One is the insights or really understanding the psychology of a doctor and the practice that doctor runs. And that will depend on a doctor who's doing dermatology, vis-a-vis internal medicine, vis-a-vis a diabetologist may take up this platform differently. A doctor sitting in a metro vis-a-vis a non-metro may take up this differently, and a doctor sitting in a hospital who's really looking for patients to walk in may look at it very differently. So one is that angle, right? I think the other angle is what kind of user interface that is there. So technology has always played a role, and I think healthcare needs to really step up. If I look at consumer goods, if I look at FMCG, if I look at e-commerce, I think healthcare has because it has a clinical component, I think it needs to step up hugely on the user interface, on the integration and everything else. And some of these startups which I see coming in and the innovation that are happening are moving towards that front, but that needs to happen. I think the other thing, if I look at what's happening on the hospital front, now let me take the hospital side.
Amit, I think I have one question there.
Yes.
Here, Milind here. You totally very rightly mentioned about. Can you put on your mic on mute? There's some disturbance coming. Yeah. So I being a doctor and lawyer both, so I know the absolute shift that has happened in the present time, and fortunately, government came out with something called telemedicine practice guidelines, which is a legally binding document which came from Board of Governors of National Medical Commission along with Niti Aayog. Of course, needs to be slightly streamlined, but it's a great document because before that there was a lot of apprehension on part of doctors whether I can do it or not. And you very rightly mentioned about what type of doctor is going to use this. The challenge the medical fraternity today is saying that post lockdown situation, though shops and everything will open up, hospitals are not going to function even to 60% of their capabilities. I'm going broadly speaking because India is a very fragmented healthcare, right from tier 4 to tier 1 metro and corporate. There are so many private nursing homes which play significant role, and that is where there is a huge worry on that. How to bring patient back to hospitals? I was a surgeon, so I am purely talking from surgical point of view. That not only doctors who are going to face some kind of a concern on patients not coming, because I don't see any time where that fear is a wrong word, but the potential of getting contaminated with COVID-19 is wiped off from India. It is going to be there for a few years. That is what my take is. So there is a concern from doctor side. Second concern is from patient side because a lot of patients, as you very rightly mentioned, that are being a doctor, I'm worried is they are self-treating themselves. Chronic patients. Let me go and buy. Okay, I am non-diabetic. I'm taking X medicine. I got sugar. Let me take one more. Those things started happening. Slight complicated cases. Where patient would have otherwise immediately gone for slight chest pain and perspiration to hospital. Could be a myocardial infarction, heart attack. Those patients are not going. So I think, and that is one point. And second point on telehealth, one important thing that needs to happen, telemedicine guideline is fine, but regulations need to be very proper because there is a fear. I've been talking to doctors. I don't know, 6-7 webinars with doctors on telemedicine only, and we are a part of drafting telemedicine bill for Niti Aayog through Telemedicine India. Is they are worried about liability because on one hand you have telemedicine practice guidelines, but on the other hand there are so many case laws which stop you from doing certain things on online platform or through WhatsApp or SMSs. So I think it is going to stay. It will have to stay. But I think since you are a part of important positions, I think something needs to be done so that there is a win-win situation for doctors as well as patients as well as technology service providers. Like for example, telemedicine guidelines excludes all technologies, including AI. So there is a fear. A lot of startups are our client. They say we are out of this because everybody is ultimately any error happening. There is going to be a general application of other laws. So I think this is what I just being a doctor and lawyer both said. Uh, to balance out the apprehension and fear on part of doctors for the benefit of patients to get early access in case of complication, government will have to come out with some interesting and robust and easy regulations for telehealth. Sorry to stop you.
No, I'm with you, Milind. I think the analogy here is that we had a train that was running. We are building the tracks 100 meters ahead. Now we have put a bullet train instead of a diesel engine, right? On the same thing. And to me, I believe that what is happening today, which is why may stick, some of these may not. is the robustness of the technology itself, and B is the depth and the sophistication of the regulation behind it, which will have these people continue on these platforms. And the jury is out there, right? I mean, y'all are pretty much in the thick. But today, for a long time, as this sector was not together, all of this was work in progress. Now, suddenly, all the pieces are being put together and trying to be pushed into a connection, right? And hence, there will be certain questions that are answered because we were not ready for it. And hence, some of those things, if they are not addressed in the right time, during this lockdown or during the new situation, people may adapt to it because they have no choice. But then they will wean off over a period of time if they don't see the robustness of the regulation. So let me move on to hospitals. I want to cover each stakeholder very quickly in the system. So on the hospital front, you see, the hospitals, in my view, are stuck between, in some way, a rock and a hard place. Right? Because you understand, the hospital sector in India is a largely very, very fragmented. There are many segments, there are few large players, there is a huge number of individual hospitals that have been operating. A large part of the hospital business has been cash business, small part has been credit business, some international patients for some of these hospitals. Some of them have, really thrived on RSBY and now they were looking for Ayushman Bharat business, right? Many have NABH, many of them don't have it. So there is a mixed quality standard across these hospitals. There was in any case a supply shortage and huge amount of attrition and demand for skilled workers of hospitals because these people have been going overseas. Now, in this current situation, what has happened? The volume of patients has dropped by almost 70-80%, number one, right? There are still a lot of regulations which are work in progress. The healthcare workers are in short supply and they need to make sure that the workers continue. Many of them are from different states, so they need to make sure that the reverse migration of the healthcare workers does not happen. Once the international borders open, they need to make sure that some of these healthcare workers don't apply for jobs overseas because there's a huge demand for healthcare worker jobs even in different parts of the world. And India is a sought after market for healthcare skilled workers. So I think that's one side. I think the other side is because some of these hospitals are individual businesses, the moment you have a 70-80% drop in volumes, there is a financial pressure, right? There is a huge financial stress on the hospitals that are there today. And many of them will have to think through how they build confidence back to the patients to come back into the hospital. Now, part of it is dependent on themselves because they need to put forward very strong infection control guidelines. They need to train their staff and everything else. And part of it is based on the system and the government support and the patients, right? So to me, for the hospital sector and the providers, I think the next 5 to 6 months are going to be a lot of challenge, a lot of navigation that they will need to do, and they will need to work doubly hard to build confidence in the patients that their hospitals are still open for people to come in and get themselves treated, right? Plus, make sure that the frontline health workers are not fatigued, they are continuing to stay healthy, and they do not, suffer from attrition. So the hospital sector, in my view, I think is going to, we need to wait and watch on what's really happening out there. I think when you come to the entire space around the chemists, right? Now, let's understand what is happening on the retail space. Today, we have close to 1 million pharmacies in the country. And only about 5 or 6% of those pharmacies are in any kind of organized setup. The rest of those pharmacies are all semi-organized, single proprietor shops, which also means that there is an entire local retail model that exists, almost like a Kirana model, right? Now, suddenly, that model is getting influenced because what is going on is my propensity as a person or a consumer to buy something is based on the preference for the closest chemist. But the fact also remains that if you go and see the inventory level at these chemists, it's widely varying because the entire supply chain is actually also very fragmented with 55 to 60,000 distributors, right? So each chemist is actually getting significantly affected on how much inventory they are being able to hold. Now, What is happening as a result of that is you're seeing a shift in consumer preference towards e-commerce and digital platforms, right? Which is where we are seeing some of the e-commerce companies have 2 to 3 times the number of orders that are being placed, which were pre-COVID time. And I think that trend may continue because it's a habit shift that is taking place. But I think one other thing which may happen is the emergence of a completely new e-commerce model, which is the hyperlocal model, where it will have some of these chemists that are there, but almost playing a role in a different way rather than more completely centralized organized setups. Because the last mile delivery is going to be extremely important, as critical as the delivery that is there between the chemist and the stockist. Right. Now let's come to patients. On the patient front, if you break down the patients between 2 or 3 different segments. One is you have chronic patients, right? Patients who are basically, and Milind, you very rightly talked about the behavior of these chronic patients. But you see, what is going on is there are 2 factors that will play a role. One is affordability. Let's please understand that there is a certain monthly bill that a chronic patient is faced with to take care of his or her chronic condition. And that bill is not a small bill just on medicine itself, right? It runs into few thousand rupees. Now there is a decision the patient will have to make in the choice of the medicine, in the brand of the medicine, and everything else to manage that expense because his or her income is going to come under pressure with the economic stress that we are going to face over the next 12 to 15 months. I think the second piece is going to be, to your point of the patients, is, and which is a more dangerous trend, which I called as collateral damage, is that people are going to postpone care. So today, if I were to go and see a specialist or I were to go and get myself treated for a stage 1 lymphoma, I may push it down to a stage 3 or stage 4 because I don't have access to a hospital. And that will push up my own cost of care, but it will also push up the catastrophic consequences of me postponing that care. And in a market like India, which is not a reimbursed or insurance driven market to that extent, where a lot of my own decisions on managing my care rest on my own, and add to it the lack of awareness a patient has in some of these things, I think that it's going to have serious consequences, right? So to me, one of the biggest things that is needed to be done is building a lot of patient these things, the pros and cons of self-medication, self-care, what to do, what not.
So I think Gauri, you are also there, and I think we have worked on a lot of hospital and pharmacy-related issues. And I will just pick up something from what he mentioned on hospital, and I think it is going to be a huge challenge. And what I personally feel that today in COVID times, and he rightly mentioned that there is sudden increase in demand of simple things like masks N95. In fact, price control also happened on that, considering essential commodity, and a lot of demand on ventilators and other related products like IVDs and testing kits. Now, recently, all those products have become regulated. What I feel that the time would come to for hospitals to really come up to great standards, beefing up infrastructure, right from facilities, etc. So, Gauri, what is your take on how hospitals will really manage this post-COVID or post-lockdown situation? Situation would be there could be less flow of patients, but at the same time you need to beef up your operations. So I see some kind of a delta in that situation. So how hospitals should manage that?
I think couple of thoughts here, till Amit comes in, it will be definitely a combination of telemedicine where, they will be, your regular patients could be handled, as a follow-up, etc. A combination of that. And of course, whether a hospital themselves can also manage delivery because some of the hospitals do have their attached pharmacies, right? So can they create an integrated package for the patients that are, sort of that are enrolled in that hospital, not only to manage their health but also the supply, etc. So that is one thought process I had, and especially when Amit was mentioning about, the the supply chain for the medicines, right? Where there is local medicine, local chemists versus a major chemist attached in a particular area. So a combination of that, whether the hospitals can take care not only of through their pharmacies, but create a network where they are able to somehow deliver and manage the patient as a whole. That one thought process. Second, slightly different point, and probably, I wanted to check with Amit on this. The point that he mentioned about the healthcare workers and the healthcare workers themselves, getting exposed, or maybe even their families getting exposed to the infection. In that scheme of things, whether the smaller setups, I'm sure larger setups may have some insurance scheme, etc., but how are the smaller setups able to manage the insurance for the healthcare workers and their families, because ultimately the family may get equally exposed. So I think these are the two thought processes I had when I was listening to Amit, that we need to start thinking, and the hospitals too should start thinking, even at the rural level, and whether the government is in a position to create some insurance scheme, for the healthcare workers, which the smaller setups are able to sort of come in and and take the benefit of.
We quickly discussed on just on hospitals and little bit on e-pharmacy, etc. So I think we were on the three factors that will affect technology, etc. And we discussed about hospitals and then discussing about patients and self-care. Now over to you to take it forward.
Yes. So I was just completing the point around the patients. I'm sorry about this technology glitch. I was completing the point around the patients. So I mentioned that one are the chronic patients, right? And there is an issue of affordability as well as postponing care. The second type of patients are the acute care patients. And apart from the current viral infection, there are many, many acute related cases, respiratory cases that still need to be treated and dealt with, which could also lead to a certain amount of seriousness if they're not dealt with on time. And unfortunately, today, the entire system has got so clogged up that many of these patients are not getting the care. So to your point, Milind, I think one is on telemedicine while it's opened up. And the great part is, you see, while the government has been promoting this and pushing this forward, what has been encouraging when I was looking at the research is that the most downloaded healthcare app in the world is actually Arogya Setu, right? Now, there is a massive opportunity that sits in front of us to move the platform, which is a response platform on COVID, to actually a platform that could be built as a digital platform for the country if we could pivot it. And I think there is a massive opportunity for the government to be willing and to be able to pivot this into a platform which could have telemedicine, which could have other ways in which connecting the system, because that system is sitting right in between 120 million people already and the healthcare system, right? But I think on the patient front, the jury is out there, in my view, even post-lockdown, how some of these patients are going to access care. I think people going back to the hospitals, and especially India, one more problem in India I must call out, which we need a solution for, is 30 to 40% of patients are what is called drainage patients, yes, which means patients that travel between states, or patients who come to Mumbai. So for example, Tata Memorial has thousands of people who are actually queuing up at the OPD. And my sense is that number, at least 60-70% of that number is not from Mumbai, right? So a large number of people actually travel in. And unless we don't have a model that meets those needs, there is a gap in healthcare that is not going to be met, right? Now, the last point on the whole ecosystem, we've talked about supply chain, we've talked about hospitals, we've talked about chemists, we've talked about doctors, and we've talked about patients. Let's come to the point, right? And I think there are two or three things at least, I would want to share, and these are my views. I think the government has been extremely proactive in pulling together, reacting to some of the issues that have been bubbled up by the industry in declogging the supply chain, in getting goods moved between states and everything else. I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in making sure that the public and private machinery work together, right? Parts of it are starting to happen because you see, we will need the entire infrastructure up and running. And we will also need the infrastructure up and running in a way that is sustainable. And I think that there needs to be work done on that front. That is still work in progress. I think the other piece where Milind, your company can play a big role is some of the regulatory aspects are related to three things. One is all the digital interactions and the resultant data and everything else that results from that. I think the second thing is trials to accelerate some of the environment to make India a much more feasible market to run some of these trials. And I think the third piece around this is how do you create and protect the healthcare fraternity and have a strong framework which is robust enough for malpractices not to happen from any angle. Because the moment you are putting technology together and connecting the system, one of the most important things is a framework and trust, right? And that will become even more needed in this situation. So I will stop. I think we've got about 15 minutes. Happy to take questions. Yeah.
So I think Gauri has one question. However, I have just one quick question on what you just mentioned about, healthcare workers being taken care of. And since you are involved with Ayushman Bharat, Ayushman Bharat is a great scheme. I'm expecting Ayushman Bharat version 2.0 very soon. Uh, but now we realize how frontline healthcare workers. I'm not talking about only doctors, but paramedics, phlebotomists, nursing staff. So everybody is exposed to certain kind of a situation, and today, government gave some kind of 50 lakhs of insurance coverage to all of them, which was possibly an ad hoc arrangement and a great move, no question about it. But do you see that some kind of Ayushman Bharat type, I'm talking slightly very stretched, but for at least, if not doctors, but other frontline healthcare workers to be covered from insurance coverage, not only from liability point of view, but overall what they suffer from because of their exposure to, like for example, hospital cross infection is one of the nastiest things that can happen to any doctor or something who is a diabetic or comorbid condition. Do you see such type of situation would help, such type of facility would help in India, or is there a scope for that? Canvas is huge.
No,
That's why.
no, absolutely, it would help, Milind, and it is much needed because we we need to provide for, and especially at this time where the exposure and the risk is higher, we need to provide for everybody, right? I mean, to me, each individual in that facility is important, whether that person is part of the housekeeping, whether person is part of the nursing staff, or that person is a registered practitioner or a surgeon, right? We need all of them healthy to function and to be protected, right? I think more important than that, in my view, is how some of these hospitals will put in place very strong processes, protocols, and guidelines to actually make sure that some of these health workers are following these guidelines and adhering to them, and many of them have already started to do that. I mean, that to me is the solution. I think the long-term solution is staying with this situation and managing the operations rather than just risk cover. But I think both are needed. Yeah.
Great. Gauri, I think you had a question on healthcare. We have few questions from participants also, but we were discussing some point on healthcare. So over to you, Gauri.
Yeah, so I think before when you dropped off, I did raise this question on insurance overall, but I guess you are partly answering that question, but maybe I can ask that again. That ultimately, the healthcare workers and their families will be overall exposed, right? So, maybe the bigger hospitals or chains, they may get covered in their insurance, but an overall scheme of things required to cover all healthcare workers at at all levels within that possible insurance or any other scheme for taking care of their health. The second question or an observation which would love to hear from you is, we did start in India quite a few initiatives such as Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, Fit India, and the like. So how do you see? Because what I hear is that, because of the current situation, suddenly, in different cities, a lot of, activity in terms of cleanliness drive, etc., has started. So how do you believe that, this all that can get integrated to overall healthy and, responsible environment, and also, other, initiatives of the government sort of, dovetailing in the situation that we are in, overall. You have any, would love to hear your perspective.
So, Gauri, I'll give you a realistic view of how I feel life will evolve, right? I think right now we are in crisis management mode. And I think this crisis management mode will continue for some time because we are dealing with something that we have not faced before. A lot of programs, in my understanding, have been put at the back burner to deal with this current situation, right? And I think one of the programs which may get a boost, in my view, could be the immunization program and maybe the adult immunization program as well. A lot of push will happen on that front, maybe as the vaccine comes online, and we will put forward a full drive. I think the whole Swachh Bharat piece and the Fit India piece, to me, it's a question of how we will learn from this whole epidemic and pandemic, right? And all governments can only do so much on Swachh Bharat and Fit, right? It's all up to us. We are seeing, behavior change related initiatives happening in other parts of the world because memory is short. Once people go back, they go back to their old way. So I frankly don't know. But given the state of the healthcare system that we have, where a lot of things need to be built, to me, it's a call for action for us to actually strengthen our whole health system at the very grassroots level on infrastructure. You see, one big piece I think that will happen is also training of healthcare workers and capacity building. We have realized that we have a huge shortage of healthcare workers in the country, right? Which is why we are facing such a problem. So I think there'll be a lot of push towards that. There may be community care models, but I can't comment really on how much we will see continued, investment on some of these things, which are down the line in my view.
So,
Yeah, so basically, whether it will create a movement or it is just a short-term quick fix is probably time will tell, right? I mean, hopefully it should definitely become long-term. Yeah.
so Amit, there is a very interesting question from Aishwarika, and she has raised some very important point of mental health that people are suffering or going to suffer in post-COVID era or post-lockdown era. So can you just share some thoughts on how exactly the mental health situation would span, or how it can be taken care of, or would some machineries play a role in tech? Because being a doctor, I am also expecting a lot of situations on mental health coming up.
So this is a global dialogue that is happening, Milind. And in the last few weeks, I have seen a lot of initiatives being run by insurance companies, by a lot of technology companies, startups on building some of these platforms. To me, the impact on this is going to be multifold. For the employed worker, right, who there'll be fear of job loss, and for the people who continue employment, there'll be digital fatigue, right? Which is a big issue in itself. And I think to the rest of the population, there's this whole fear psychosis as well as the stress that is going out there. If you ask me my personal opinion, I think we in India have seen so much of strife ourselves compared to Western economies that we don't think of mental health as a business, right? We take a lot of things head on. And, I am just hoping that some of the practices of Ayush as well as meditation and yoga that we have, because I personally believe in it, I think that some of these are real solutions to handling this. I mean, this to me is not about popping a pill or doing some classes. I think it's a lot at the inner level. That's my personal belief, and I am hoping that India will see this through much better given the spiritual base that we have.
And I think at the end of the day, I think for mental health, stops at you, possibly. There's another question from Adil Karimboy. He talked about, you spoke about three factors that would affect technology development in the Medicare and how attentive people are. First was understanding doctor psychology and practice various field areas. Second was user interface, and you missed third one.
Third one was content.
Yeah. Can you just shed some light on that?
Thank you, Adil. But third one was content, because content is so important in all of this.
Yeah. So what do you mean by content? Means specific examples can you give?
See, today what is happening is you as a doctor and me as a patient, we are being bombarded by things.
Okay.
Many things that are relevant, right? And I think as we are moving to a more digitally connected world, it's going to play a huge role on, and these are the three things I think, right? How well I understand you or your psyche, how well I communicate. So what is the clarity of that content and how good is the user interface? And that's where I see innovation needs to take all these three into account.
Yeah, and I think this is question for me. I think you are at the helm of the biggest clinical research and technology company, IQVIA, and pre I call it clinical trial downfall era, which was there a few years ago. There was a mushrooming of pardon my language, but mom and pop CROs, small CROs or so-called CROs coming up. And today I'm seeing, and you have been dealing with startups also, that I see a lot of people working on some kind of health tech or a med tech service provider. Now, how do you see being an investor, being a consultant, as well as IKEA experience? Where do you see this healthcare startup? Would it be a bubble which would possibly burst post COVID and only good ones will remain? So how do you see that? So you see small people giving access, so I just want your take on that.
Milan, my take is that health tech in India is now getting into the second wave of more and more innovation, more and more companies coming in, more and more things being tried, right? If I look at the scenario 5 years ago, the situation was very different because 5 years ago, the awareness was not so much, the sophistication of Indian startups was not so much, the funding available to Indian startups was not so much, and the penetration of mobile and mobile commerce and e-commerce was not so much, right? So we are in a different era today. Having said that, I think there are 2 or 3 things which are unique about healthcare, and I think the value of death in healthcare startups is way higher than other startups because you have one is there is an entire clinical component of it. The other is there are certain stakeholders or gatekeepers. There are pharma companies, there are doctors, there are hospitals who have to be part of the stakeholder ecosystem, right? So that's one. I think the other thing we need to understand is if you look at the top 10 platforms in the world, right? Whether it's a WhatsApp or a Facebook or things like that or a TikTok, I think what needs to happen is you have to figure out how you accelerate getting onto a big user base. It's very, very difficult to actually accelerate user bases, right? And that's where I think the healthcare model needs to pivot. I think no longer can you operate in isolation. I think you'll have to think about how you actually create a model where you have very sound clinical know-how and technology around the whole healthcare piece, but then you are working with platforms that actually have that proliferation itself.
Just a question, I believe, when we talk about the network effect, right? Ultimately, that access to the large, database, but slightly related point, when we look at the information management, and when you spoke about, a national platform, for healthcare management, etc. There is a lot of informational asymmetry in the manner in which today healthcare, information is maintained, whether it's digital format or not, and there is no standardization across. So do you see that there are startups or otherwise who are taking the initiative of standardization of the digitized information, which may actually help us further?
Gauri, I think there are many companies doing it. We also play a lot of role in the whole digitization piece and standardization piece. But I think the basic issue is the plumbing is missing, right? I mean, today, if you have 500,000 doctors who are practicing, I think a fraction of them are using any kind of technology platform, right? Most of them are still writing on pen and paper.
Right.
So if you don't have something that is there, then the aspect of how you standardize and how you push through actually comes in. So we are a few steps behind there, in my view. First, I think that plumbing needs to happen. And I'm hoping that this COVID situation will actually accelerate the plumbing.
Thank you. I think I have one small question. Before that, I want Nishit Bhai to share his thoughts and any questions he has for you. Nishit Bhai.
No, I think it's been wonderful. I also had one question, and you alluded to that in the 2 week ago presentation you made. Now, what do you think is now the um, future for the next few months? You indicated there could be second round of pandemic sometime around 15th of June or something like that. Do you think still it is likely, or any thoughts on that, or how long will this continue, and that will allow people to understand how to move forward, Some thoughts on that.
So Nishit bhai, I mean, look, I think the way we are looking at the current wave, right? Uh, and the addition of cases, we are adding about 8.5, 9,000. I'm not an expert epidemiologist, but my sense is that we are still a few weeks away from what is called the critical peak, right? The new case to the total case. And then you'll have, based on how we contain and do the contact tracing, maybe that will start, coming down. Now, the entire world obviously is looking to how this would mutate or how there could be a reincidence or a re-emergence, right, in 3 to 4 months, because it has always happened that there has been a re-emergence.
Sure, sure, sure.
So yeah, so that's the sense. I mean, again, it's anybody's guess because we are still through the first phase right now on going through. But 3 4 months down the line, maybe we'll have another situation, and then it may come through the and wave and again. Yeah.
So the easing of lockdown, do you think also could rebound if it is not properly handled? Because of course today we have 8 zones, other zones, whatever. The easing again, how people behave, and that could
Yeah.
cause some problems
It's
because
it's very tough. It's very tough in India, Nishit bhai, with the population density we have. But I think one of the things which I've been thinking about and maybe we need to consider is, you see, one is we are testing people who are infected, but what about testing and figuring out people who have antibodies already, right? Because actually, and this is what some of the countries have started to do, that they've started to test people who have antibodies, right? And there are these people are out there, in the front line. So maybe we'll have to switch our strategy few months down the line because you can't have a situation like this where people are locked up.
there was earlier people were saying because India has hotter weather and other kind of thing. Now we have hot weather has
There
come, and we
is
see this monsoon. So you think monsoon can aggravate? And can any thoughts on that? It's generally
so
holding you to
we
any
should, yeah, there is no evidence.
speculation.
There is no evidence on weather-related conditions and life of the virus, right? So I have not read or heard. Maybe Milind is a doctor; he may add. But I think the monsoon rate. The only thing I would say very practically is that monsoon leads to other diseases and compromises immunity, right?
Exactly.
Watched
So
because
very careful now in because
So, Nishit, I think yeah, you very rightly say that this COVID-19 virus, which actually is a SARS-2 virus, has no influence of any kind of environment or weather. So, but as mentioned, and monsoon reduces your immunity for sure. So that is where I think everybody needs to be very careful, and especially in Mumbai, honestly speaking, and some areas where we still have a strong surge in cases. So before we end, I just got 2 3 minutes extension because there is one very important question. Nishiva, you wanted to ask question? I'm sorry.
no. I think I basically wanted to thank Amit. You can continue, no problem. But it was such a wonderful exposition. So I'm very happy that you found time at a very short notice. And I think we had very good registration also at a 1 day notice or so. And I'm very happy that you made it. So before anybody else, say, I would like to say thank you so much, Amit. Would love to have you again.
my pleasure. Anything for
Right.
you.
I was to ask this question, and suddenly this question also popped up. That is from Karthik Vyas. Now his take is now right on your where you are. What is the future of clinical research in India because of COVID? do you see global companies coming at India and there will be surge in clinical trials, or they would still shy away? Maybe liquidity crunch or financial concerns would impact CR outsourcing, which is happening. Your take on clinical research, COVID effect, post-COVID effect.
Well, that's a great question, and
Whatever you can share.
I wish I had all the answers, Karthik. I think one thing that we still need to do is we need to see how feasible India is for a clinical trial environment, right? We still don't have phase one, done in the way it should be done and everything else. So that's number one. I think the other thing is also the ability of or the readiness of the hospitals and the framework and infrastructure the hospitals have to actually enable such trials, right? So one is the regulation, the other is the infrastructure. I think the third is obviously the outsourcing story, right? And we've been part of the journey. There is a strong outsourcing story now. There are many global companies who are present here. But I think number one and number two still need to be worked on, in my view, to make the market, a wholesome and holistic market. Have the companies, the companies are continuing their activity. I don't see a drop in the activity of the companies. Obviously, they are being constrained by the ability of the hospitals to actually recruit the patients and work through that, and that is a temporary challenge. Many of us have pivoted to models where we are using technology to do this. But I think from an India perspective, I think jury is out there, and I'll call out in a bigger way. Jury is out there on outsourcing as a whole, right? Because we as a country and how we will deal with the situation and how the whole work from home will work, how the staff will work, how productive they'll be is what the global companies are seeing into India. I mean, this is even beyond clinical research, right? And then if you put overlay clinical research, I think this was an industry that was not a very mature and happening industry. So I think there's a double task of making that happen. I am hoping that some of the Indian companies will accelerate fast track research. The government will work with them and really will become a showcase on how we have worked through and really created, some vaccines for the rest of the world. I mean, that will be proof in itself. But
I think the last question by Dr. Jaishree is saying, will India go for insurance coverage mandatory in schools, university, education institutions, even for students besides the employee and employers? Health insurance, I believe she's referring to. Would that be a COVID effect post-lockdown?
It's tough to answer, Milind, because I firmly the population income state and the way public health works in India, we are going to have multi-layered insurance. We will have public health insurance available for people who can't afford it. Then people who can afford it, I believe that there'll be a private insurance cover, right? The government may mandate people to take insurance, but I think the multi-layer insurance will come, and I don't think the government will take full responsibility to provide for insurance to people who can afford it.
That's true.
What I heard was that many US insurance companies have declined. Because they say this pandemic is not covered. Only a couple of them have said they will cover. So, people do not know how to even read insurance policy. One of the things is, and everything is in fine print. And often insurance companies also good at, at declining, they know the law well and, I'm generally saying not necessarily particular. But, one has to be very careful how to read the policies, and therefore a burden falls on the government to a great extent or somebody, because if the private people take insurance policy assuming they are safe and sound and everything is covered and something comes up which you are told that you are not covered, then, so it's very important that a fair degree of education also happens from insurance companies to sensitize people that, oh, these are not the things that are covered, and or in private sector, insurance agents, insurance educators. I think that would be very helpful, because on the one hand, insurance is good, but if it can give you a false sense of security, then it's a bit of a problem. So it's very important that we create that ecosystem as well. Anyway, I don't want to over to you, Omit. And
thank you, Nishit Bhai, and thank you, Amit. That was a very meaningful and very interesting conversation. And I'm sure people are going to get something out of this conversation. And I'll just end by saying two things. The doctor in me says that the new normal has arrived, You will never have post-COVID era in India. You will have post-lockdown era for sure. If you are careful, if you are watchful, coronavirus is not going to do anything to you. So just follow what you are supposed to follow. Even though you are out of lockdown, certain things need to continue. Of social distancing, personal hygiene, cleaning of hands are going to continue. That's what doctor in me says. And the lawyer in me says, you have no choice. Thank you very much, Amit.